Alright, this is my subject, and we are going to analyze her landing mechanics in the sagittal and frontal plane. The goal is to observe and identify potential risk factors in reference to the landing error scoring system. Even though we are only doing a counter movement jump, the LESS protocol investigates the biomechanics of landing using variables that have been shown to increase lower body injuries. And so hopefully we can pick out the weaknesses and make corrections for when we need to prescribe exercises later on. So from the starting position here, let's roll it at half speed. Initially, actually, you can see probably based on where her stance is at that we want to get a little bit wider. It seems like she's a little bit either at hip width or narrow to hip width. So from the starting position, we want a wider stance. Let's clear that out. Okay, so as we play this through on the initial takeoff, we can see a little shift in that left knee here, which is causing a little bit of a knee valgus, and that's usually due to a weakness in our hip abductors, and it's a quad dominance issue. So if we want, for prescribing later on, something that's going to help strengthen our hamstrings, gluteus medius, and then our hip abductors that are going to help strengthen and avoid that knee valgus in the future. So if we want to kind of continue to this landing phase here, actually I'm going to play this full speed because one of those things that you don't need the camera for is you can hear how loud someone lands. And so that's one of those cues where we would want to suggest making sure that they're landing softly, making sure that they go to more of a toe-to-heel absorption. In this case, she's landing flat-footed. And we'll be able to see better from the frontal point of view here, which, let me pull it up. So as we go to the landing side, she comes up, and it's very stiff on that landing. So again, flat-footed, but there's no absorption in the knees, in the hips. Her trunk is standing straight up as well, too. So if we want to bring this back, one thing that we're looking at as well with the takeoff is as she starts to take off here, we can see there's not much of a parallel between the back and the shins. And again, she's not creating much depth. This might be due to ankle mobility. So if we're looking at that, again, the stiffness, she's not getting low. So there's no angle being formed here. If we actually look at the angle that she's bringing, that she has back here, let's see if I can adjust this. So this here tells me, I don't know if you see this, it says 113 degrees. Where we want that to be is 90 degrees here. So bring this up, which is a lot lower. So she's not getting the depth and able to generate as much force or momentum in the propulsion of that height. So let's go ahead and continue here. Stiff landing, you can see that if there is any knee bending, it's just slightly in front of the toes here. You can see it more dramatically here. She drops down. Let me grab, where is this? Okay, here we go. The knee is way over the toes here. There's no depth in that drop here, so we want to make sure that she's able to push those hips back and down and really try to sink into it. The trunk is sitting straight up, and so we want that coming forward about 45 degrees, which is going to help us, again, with that absorption of the landing and avoid that that pressure coming down with that high force. The knees are coming out past the toes, which is also causing that shear stress on the tibia, which has been known to cause injuries in the ACL. So basically, based on this analysis, we should be training for weaknesses in the posterior chain, specifically hamstrings, glutes, but also training those hip adductors, muscles to prevent the knee valgus that is occurring. I think building from the ground up would be the most essential thing because I feel like she is a beginner when it comes to these jumps and landing. So basically, making sure that warm-up drills on days that we're working on plyometrics would be utilizing reactive drops. So, just trying to train the neuromuscular pathways that are responsible for the quick reaction and softer landings. A progression that we could also use is jumping onto a box. There was one of the articles that I had read was talking about if you want to improve depth, that jumping onto a box will actually allow you to sit into your depth a little bit easier. So in this case, this would be something that would be beneficial for her situation. the ankle mobility. So again, we want to make sure that she's implementing ankle mobility exercises, whether that's using bands to actively stretch the joints, but anything that's going to help improve that dorsiflexion. So again, if we kind of utilize all this and just really try to work on that depth and being able to get mobility in the ankles, better flexion in the hips and knees, and then that slight trunk flexion as well too, it seems like we'd be able to generate a lot more force and a lot safer as well.